drive-in movies or any of that stuff. She didn't even get, 50s excitement. She just really had to sit there and...
She could make me some lasagna.
She can't make you lasagna. They didn't even let her go in the kitchen. So anyway, Lisbetta just sat around and she watched the world go by, and she was very lonely. She would hang out just on her little porch, and she had some plants and stuff, but that's about all. She had a little basil that grew out there and some little plants. Anyway, it did happen that one summer when it was getting very warm and she was feeling very lonely, her brothers decided that they needed to hire a clerk, if you will, a young man who came in to balance their books and do the paperwork they didn't want to do.
Lazy.
That kind of stuff. Kind of like Scrooge, but there were 3 of them. So anyway, this young man that they hired to come in, his name was... Shoot, I forgot his name. Lorenzo. His name was Lorenzo. And they hired young Lorenzo, and Lorenzo came and he was balancing their books, and after a while, Lisbetta, who's the name of the girl that the story is about, she went, just curiosity got the better of her, and she kind of snuck by so she could catch a glimpse of this young man who was there. And when he saw her and she saw them, they were instantly drawn to each other. And he was unable to look away from her face because she was a beautiful woman. And soon thereafter, they started to have stronger and stronger feelings for each other. And one day, he just admitted that he was in love with her and couldn't imagine his life without her. And she admitted that she felt the same way. And so they started a torrid love affair. And in this day and age, torrid love affair probably meant they were, playing cuddly face or something. But I could be wrong. That could be the mother and me wanting to keep this PG-11. In any case, as these things tend to do, sooner or later, she wasn't paying attention because she was all love struck. And one of her brothers caught her sneaking into his room in the evening. And that didn't go over very well with her brothers. So, instead of just confronting them, as you know, it's always good to get your problems out there in the open. Instead of just confronting the young lovers, they pretended like nothing was going on, and the brothers invited Lorenzo to go out with them one evening and, hang out in town, go have a few drinks, that kind of, guy stuff. So they were going to have a guy night out. And unfortunately, when he did go out with the brothers, they lured him outside the walls of the city, and they pounced on him. And the 3 brothers took their daggers and they sliced him into little bitty pieces and killed him dead. And then they buried the body where nobody could find him. So they went home like nothing happened. But then they had to come up with a story for their sister. So they told the sister that he was called away for some other work. And so she just went back to sitting and waiting. But she was sure that he would come back because he had pledged his love to her. And they waited and waited. And after a while, she asked her brothers where the clerk was, if he was going to come back. And they, played stupid. And they were like, why would you want to know about a clerk? He was just a clerk. He wasn't anybody important. So more days passed, and she was just crying and inconsolable and couldn't stop thinking about her one true love until one night when she was dreaming, he came to her in a dream, ghostly and pale, and told her to stop her weeping because he couldn't ever come back to her because he had been murdered by her brothers. And he told her where they had buried him. And she had to go and see for herself, so she snuck away from her house, and she went to the spot where her love's ghost had told her that he was buried. And unfortunately, she found his remains exactly where he had said. Her heart was broken, and she was just, again, inconsolable, knowing that now he could never return to her because he had been taken from her. And what was even worse, that her brothers were the ones who took him. However, she was a woman, and this was back in the days where women didn't really have much choice in matters such as these. So, in order to be able to mourn her love and keep him close to her, she took out her dagger that she carried with her, and she cut off his head. Because he was dead already. She couldn't take the whole body back with her, but she took his head, because she could carry that, and she wrapped it up in part of her dress, and she took it back to her little area where she sat with her plants, and she took an earthenware pot, and she interred him in and put his head and buried it properly, and she placed some basil plants above it and to keep it safe, and so there she would sit near her only remains of her love, and she would cry, and she would think of him and remember him, and her tears watered the plant, and his head also deteriorating as it does, it gave nourishment to the plant, and soon the plants became rich and sweet and beautiful. But her brothers were watching this and saw her just crying and wasting away, and thought maybe something was wrong with the plant. Something was wrong with the plant. So when she wasn't sitting next to it, they went and they stole away the plant, and they discovered the head of the dead Lorenzo inside the plant, and they panicked, and they took the head, and they took off. They hightailed it out of the town. And they left their sister there, and they went and left and never to return because they didn't want to get in trouble for murdering Lorenzo. Unfortunately, when Lisbetta, the sister, found out that her love's remains had been taken from her, she fell into a fit and then into a fever. And no matter what the doctors did, nothing could help her. And just shortly thereafter, she died. But at least she was finally with her love. And that is the story from Italy of Lisbetta and her brothers and the poor Lorenzo.
You know, I know a follow-up story to that.
You're not gonna...
If you say something about lasagna...
No.
Or spaghetti.
No, lasagna and spaghetti have no place in the story.
Pizza?
No pizza, no food. So...
Something about Italy.
No! Can I tell the story or not?
No.
Sure, go ahead.
So, the gods of Rome think that Lorenzo was treated poorly, right? So they bring him back as two hairy beasts of burden. And as these two beasts of burden carry things on their back for years and years, and eventually they're sold to a man who takes them to Hollywood, where they get into the movies.
Lorenzo
Lamas.
You're such a moron.
Yes, but you like it because it's a bad pun.
It was a terrible pun. It was good, though. All right. Lorenzo Lamas, if you hear this, please don't sue us. We don't have any money. He hit me with a blanket, y'all, in the middle of recording. He downright flopped me with his blanket on my head.
I was trying to throw it on your back and I missed. I'm sorry. All right. So, There was something else your mom found that I really like, actually, because it lets us revisit something we've done.
Yes.
Good, let's do that. I do not want this to be like the Sharon Kinney episode. No, thank you, ma'am.
Well, let's talk about Vale Mansion and Mr. Vale. Now, if you remember, Vale Mansion was one of our early episodes. I want to say episode 4.
Oh, that's a while back.
It's a while back.
It's been a minute.
26 episodes ago. But Mr. Vale had, or as they called him, Colonel Vale, because apparently back in the day,
He was a colonel.
Colonel was like one of those titles they sold. And I don't know why. And they stopped doing it, thank God. But anyway. So yeah, he was Colonel Vale. And he was brought up on charges for fraud, basically. Mm-hmm. And while this was going on, his wife, who was already sick, began to kind of lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually he's cleared of all charges. But while he's away in New York at this trial, she passes away. So when he gets home...
She overdosed on medication. They think she killed herself.
That's one thought. Other thoughts are...
Don't commit suicide!
It's not good.
It's not good. But other thoughts are it could have been cancer of the stomach.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't know what was wrong with her. Because medicine back in the day was done poorly.
Yeah, we're talking like 1800s, y'all.
Right.
It wasn't
great. And while they were kind of about to turn the corner on it, they still hadn't yet. So,
sure.
But he so loved her, or depending on who you talk to, so needed to control her that supposedly he put her body in a glass coffin on his lawn where he could look down into it and see her every day thereafter.
That's a supposedly, yes.
That's supposedly. Almost certainly not true because she's not buried there now. There's no record of her being moved. In fact, according to most things, she was buried at a cemetery here in Independence, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But, yeah.
Probably the one up there on Noland Road because it's not far from their home and it was around the same time. But anyway.
You know her last name?
I digress.
Yeah, it was Vale. Mrs. Vale.
Then, if you look around the cemetery, I bet you'd find it.
In any case.
But in any case, the idea, the point of the story is that he loved her so much that he couldn't bear to be parted from her. At least that's the...
One way of looking at it, yes.
The other story, and our friend and kind of sort of producer, Justin Julian, would argue that he so needed to control her that he couldn't let her go. But either way, the point is the same, is that when we love somebody and we lose them, it's a terrible thing.
That is true.
Do you want to do the last story? I'd say make Krysta do it. But...
Yeah, that one's... It's kind of based on old lore, and I wasn't sure on that one, so I'm going to let you take that.
Okay, let me look at it real quick. Alrighty, here we go. So, story about a knight and his lost lady. Now, in the province of Artois, on the border of France, there lay the effigies of a knight and a noblewoman, side by side, their stone elbows touching. The statues mark the tomb of the warrior Sir Eglamour and the lady Christabel, two who suffered long and bitterly for the sake of their love. The history of their ordeal and final resolution of the tale of wonders and prodigies spanning many years and many, many lands.
Yes.
Now, this is based on a Middle English poem. It was a romance. It was written sometime around 1350. It was a narrative poem about 1,300 lines. So that's a lot.
Yeah, just a little bit, you know.
And it was so popular that